Welcome back to Real and Veil Podcast, the show where we dig deep into the hidden science shaping our lives. Today's topic is both fascinating and terrifying. Microplastics have been found in the human brain. Yes, the very organ that defines who we are, our memories, our thoughts, our emotions, is quietly accumulating plastic particles. And the concentrations? They're not slowing down, they're rising over time.
It's a chilling thought, isn't it? The brain, a place we consider the core of our identity, is being slowly polluted by things we throw away. And the fact that these particles are increasing with every passing decade, that makes it even worse.
The plastic problem's origins.
Let's rewind a bit. Plastic wasn't always the villain. It actually revolutionized industries when it was first introduced in the mid-20th century. Lightweight, durable, cheap. It seemed like a miracle material at the time.
Absolutely, it was the answer to so many problems. But now, we're facing the ugly reality of over 8.3 billion tons of plastic produced, and less than 10% of it has been recycled. The rest is either buried in landfills or floating around in the oceans, slowly breaking down into those tiny, dangerous fragments we call microplastics.
And these microplastics are smaller than 5 millimeters, but what's even scarier are the nanoplastics. They're so tiny they can slip into our cells, right?
Exactly. These particles are practically invisible to the naked eye, but they're everywhere. They're in the air we breathe, the food we eat, and now, it turns out, even inside our bodies.
How they get into the brain.
So how exactly do these microplastics get from, say, a plastic bottle or a shopping bag to our brains?
Great question. It's through the bloodstream. Plastics enter our system via food, water, and air, and they're carried through our blood. Studies show that a significant portion of bottled water even contains detectable levels of microplastics.
And it doesn't stop there. There's also the gut-brain axis. Our intestines are supposed to act as a filter, but some particles manage to breach the lining, causing inflammation, and then they travel via the vagus nerve directly to the brain.
That's insane. And let's not forget how we breathe in tiny plastic particles, air pollution, synthetic clothing fibers, and tire dust. They all contain microplastics. When we breathe in these particles, they bypass the blood-brain barrier completely, traveling through the olfactory nerve straight into the brain tissue.
And in postmortem studies, researchers have found plastic particles lodged in the hippocampus, the very part of the brain that handles memory and learning.
Health risks beyond imagination.
So, what happens when plastics accumulate in our brains? What are the risks?
Well, one of the first things that happens is inflammation. Our brain recognizes these plastic particles as foreign invaders, which can trigger chronic inflammation, damaging neurons over time.
And that's not all. Plastics also release free radicals, causing oxidative stress, which destabilizes healthy brain cells. It's a double whammy.
Some plastics also contain toxic additives like BPA, phthalates, and flame retardants. These substances are known hormone disruptors and can have far-reaching effects on our neurological health.
That's terrifying, and studies have shown a possible link between microplastic accumulation and higher risks of diseases like dementia, Alzheimer's, and Parkinson's.
Exactly. And there's even early research suggesting a connection between microplastics and mental health conditions like depression and anxiety. These particles could be exacerbating those issues by contributing to brain inflammation.
It sounds like we're really just beginning to understand the full scope of the problem, but the science is already pointing in a very worrying direction.
Real-world evidence and case studies.
And it's not just a theory. In 2022, Italian researchers found microplastics in every human placenta they tested.
That's unbelievable. And by 2024, we had studies confirming the presence of microplastics in human lungs, blood, hearts, and of course, brains.
One study that stands out was a cadaver brain study. They found that brains from people living in urban areas had up to 10 times more plastic particles than those living in rural areas.
It's really eye-opening, especially when you consider that concentrations are rising every decade. This means that over time, the longer we live, the more plastic is accumulating in our brains.
It's like we're all unwittingly becoming part of an experiment we didn't sign up for.
Global inequality.
But here's the kicker. It's not an equal problem. People living in cities with heavy traffic are exposed to higher levels of tire microplastics.
And it's worse for communities that rely on bottled water, especially in poorer or hotter regions. They're ingesting higher loads of microplastics every day.
Exactly. And ironically, developing countries that import plastic waste from wealthier nations are often the ones bearing the brunt of the exposure.
This isn't just a science issue, it's a justice issue too. Those least responsible for the plastic crisis are the ones suffering the most.
What can we do?
So what can we do to tackle this?
Thankfully, there are researchers working on alternatives like biodegradable plastics that break down harmlessly and advanced water filters that can capture micro and nanoplastics.
There are even detox therapies being explored, like dietary fibers, antioxidants, and chelating agents that can help the body get rid of these particles.
And we can't forget about policy changes. The EU is already taking action by moving to ban microbeads and regulating single-use plastics.
On a personal level, there are steps we can take too. For instance, switching from bottled water to filtered tap water.
Ventilating your home is another good step. Indoor dust is a huge source of microplastics.
Also, choosing natural fabrics over synthetic ones like polyester can help reduce exposure.
And of course, supporting policies aimed at reducing plastic waste in our communities is critical.
Closing.
So, to wrap up, microplastics aren't just an environmental issue, they're a neurological one too. They're reshaping our biology in real time.
But knowledge is power. The more aware we become, the better equipped we are to take action.
While scientists don't fully understand the health impacts of MNPs in the brain, they are calling for more research to better understand whether they are harmful. Studies have shown MNPs in arteries can be a risk factor for cardiovascular disease, and that cancer cells in the stomach can spread faster after contact with MNPs.
More and more studies show that plastics are present in the brain, including this new one, and they shouldn't be there, says Castile. We don't know that much about the health effects, but the fact is that they are there, and they shouldn't be there, and maybe that's worrying enough.
Scientists are also developing solutions to reduce microplastics in the environment. There's a type of worm that eats polystyrene, and fungi and microbes that break down plastics in the environment. Scientists are developing new types of filters to remove MNPs from drinking water.
Plastic is everywhere. Most people cannot imagine a world without plastic. Even if we stop producing plastic right now, the world will still be full of microplastics, says Castile. So it's good to think about mitigation measures, applying a precautionary principle, and seeing what we can do to minimize exposure, to maybe prevent certain health risks that there might be.
So it wasn't much of a surprise when in 2022, scientists from the Netherlands and the UK announced they had found tiny plastic particles in living humans, in two places where they hadn't been seen before, deep inside the lungs of surgical patients and in the blood of anonymous donors. Neither of the two studies answered the question of possible harm, but together they signaled a shift in the focus of concern about plastics toward the cloud of airborne dust particles we live in, some of them so small they can penetrate deep inside the body and even inside cells, in ways that larger microplastics can't.
Dick Vethok, a professor emeritus of ecotoxicology at the Vrije Universiteit Amsterdam and co-author of the blood study, doesn't consider his results alarming exactly, but yes, we should be concerned. Plastics should not be in your blood. We live in a multi-particle world, he adds, alluding to the dust, pollen, and soot that humans also breathe in every day. The trick is to figure out how much plastics contribute to that particle burden, and what does that mean?
Harm is the hard part. Scientists have been studying microplastics, defined as particles measuring less than 5 millimeters, a fifth of an inch, across, for a quarter century. Richard Thompson, a marine scientist at the University of Plymouth, coined the term in 2004 after finding piles of rice-sized plastic bits above the tide line on an English beach. In the ensuing years, scientists located microplastics all over the globe, from the floor of the Mariana Trench to the summit of Mount Everest. Microplastics are in salt, beer, fresh fruit and vegetables, and drinking water. Airborne particles can circle the globe in a matter of days and fall from the sky like rain. Seagoing expeditions to count microplastics in the ocean produce incomprehensible numbers, which have multiplied over time as more tonnage of plastic waste enters the oceans every year and disintegrates. In a 2021 tally, Japanese scientists from Kyushu University estimated 24.4 trillion microplastics in the world's upper oceans, the equivalent of roughly 30 billion half-liter water bottles, a number in itself hard to fathom. A count published in 2023 put the total at over 170 trillion.
When I started doing this work in 2014, the only studies being done involve looking for where they are, says Alice Horton, a marine scientist at the UK's National Oceanography Centre who specializes in microplastic pollution. We can stop looking now. We know wherever we look, we will find them.
But determining if they cause harm is much harder. Plastics are made from a complex combination of chemicals, including additives that give them strength and flexibility. Both plastics and chemical additives can be toxic. A 2021 analysis identified more than 10,000 unique chemicals used in plastics, of which more than 2,400 are of potential concern, says Scott Coffin, a research scientist at the California State Water Resource Control Board. Many are not adequately regulated in many countries, the study says, and includes 901 chemicals that are not approved for use in food packaging in some jurisdictions.
Additives can also leach into water, and one study found that up to 88% could leach, depending on factors that include sunlight and length of immersion time. The same study found up to 8,681 unique chemicals and additives associated with a single plastic product. Sorting out which particular chemical combinations are problematic and finding the level and length of exposure that causes harm in such a convoluted brew is no easy task.
You may find a correlation, but you would be hard-pressed to find causation because of the sheer number of chemicals we're exposed to in our daily lives, says Denise Hardesty, a research scientist who has studied plastic waste for 15 years at Australia's...
The biochemist at Utah State University who studies how dust transports nutrients, pathogens, and contaminants says she is concerned because plastic production continues to increase dramatically, while so much about microplastics remains unknown. In 2020, 367 million metric tons of plastics were manufactured, an amount that is forecast to triple by 2050. It is alarming because we are far into this problem and we still don't understand the consequences, and it is going to be very difficult to back out of it if we have to, she says.
No, microplastics are not the new acid rain, not even close, the council said in response to media coverage of Bronny's 2008 paper, published in Science, which estimated that 11 billion metric tons of plastic will accumulate in the environment by 2025. Bronny calculated that just in the western U.S., more than 1,000 metric tons of tiny particles are carried by the wind and fall out of the air every year.
The ACC also criticized that finding, saying, the amount of microplastics in the environment represents only 4% of particles collected on average. The other 96% is comprised of natural materials like minerals, dirt and sand, insect parts, pollen, and more. Meanwhile, the ACC said through a spokesman it has launched a research program to help answer outstanding questions of microplastics, including those surrounding household dust, and help establish a global exchange of microplastics research between universities, research institutions, and industry. The work envisioned will include examining the environmental fate and potential routes of exposure of microplastics, identifying potential hazards, and developing a framework to assess risk. Findings will be published over the coming years.
If this episode opened your eyes, share it with a friend. The more we talk about this, the more pressure we create for change.
You've been listening to Real Unveil Podcast. Stay curious, stay critical, and most importantly, take care of your mind. It's the only one you've got.